Yeah, Sweden. There is a lot of experts on Sweden lately. There's a lot of politicians in every country that seem to know an awful lot about Sweden. Yeah, the true experts obviously are Swedish sex workers. If you're looking for experts that actually know the law, can read the Swedish documents you need to read, because most of it is not translated to English, and actually ask sex workers what they think of this law, I would say there are 4 people in the world, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's 4 people, that have actually written about it and done all these other things. And that would be me, my colleague Karina Edlund, Jay Levy sitting over there, and Petra Östergren. Anything else, don't trust it. No, and I will explain why. Because Sweden has made sure. Did anyone see this excellent little Hitler movie? You know, the Amnesty Hitler movie? Did you see that one? They made a joke. So you know these silly movies where you can put subtitles under it. So they made a joke and saying, you know, why are they talking with Swedish sex workers? We made sure those documents were never translated so no one would know what's going on in Sweden. And that is a bit what's been going on. But we are changing all that, you see, when we are releasing our report later this week, because we have translated them for you. But I will get back to that. So, I will not talk so much about when the law was introduced and because most of you have heard it 100 million times. I would say 3 things that they normally claim about the Swedish model. First of all, they claim they decriminalize sex workers. Second of all, they say it's effective against trafficking. And third, they say we do this because we care about sex workers and, you know, we don't want to punish them, we want to help them. And all the 3 of them are bullshit, and I will explain to you why. First of all, they did not decriminalize us. We were not criminalized before the law. When they introduced this law, they did not take away one single law. They just took this law and placed it on top of all the other laws that were already there. Right? So, I mean, it's a whole set of, the regular laws, We have the pimping law that's so broad that if Jay here would drop me off outside a client's place on its way to his girlfriend, he's a pimp and could go to prison for that. We can't work together. We can't rent apartments. We can't even buy an apartment, own it, sell sex in it, because then we have lost the right to own it. The only way we can work and only be affected by the law criminalizing client is selling sex in the street or going to the client's homes. So we just make that very clear. That's not decriminalization, by the way. But what's really interesting and what we haven't talked so much about in the past is what happened before the law, not the year before the law, not the 3 years before the law, what happened since the 70s in Sweden. Because this was a build-up. This didn't happen overnight. So there was an investigation in 1977, the first prostitution investigation, where they had a nice little academic going around interviewing sex workers. Then it turned out she handed it over to a psychoanalyst, Margit. She never met the women. She decided they all had suppressed memories of early sexual abuse as children. And this was put in the report. She never met them. She also was part of creating Sweden's only serial killer. It turned out he didn't kill anyone. Using the same techniques. She's dead, thank you. Which is good. Yeah, otherwise I would kill her, so. This is a quote from one of our older members. She's 78 now, still working. She has some problems, her regulars are sort of dying off. But, anyways. So this is her, when we were doing the report, we are going to publish this week. So when we told her about this, she didn't know that their interviews were analyzed by someone that never met them. She said, we were so furious when we realized what we had been subjected to. A fraud, that she took care of our cases, a sect took care of our cases, and then it later became the foundation for the legislation. With a bit of luck, we can demand that the law is repealed because it's based on totally false grounds. Do you understand? We were, as I said, furious when we read this. No one knew, these women didn't know that what they were used for. and how their stories would later, be used and twisted. And so the first report came out, and it said that all these women are, they are so damaged because they are using so much drugs, they are coming from so poor upbringings. They were saying things like, we were lacking the care of our parents, so therefore we couldn't care for ourselves. And then they did a second investigation later on, and there they sort of changed the narrative, so then we became bad mothers as well. And not so much drug use anymore, more mentally very, very unstable. And then came the sort of the law proposal, and what they said there was that it wasn't about us and it wasn't about our situation anymore. So this is a quote from the preparatory work where it says that men can buy access to women's genitals to satisfy their sexual needs is against the perception of all human beings equal worth, and us striving for full equality between women and men. The genital trade, well, gender trade, it's the same word, gender, genital in Sweden. We call it the genital trade, because that's what they call it. The genital trade conveys an unacceptable view of human beings and is a hindrance for the individual's development. And then they put that even further and said, as such, because it was hindering the individual's development, it was also a threat to society. So in the end, it was not about sex workers. It was about society. This was never about protecting sex workers. It was about protecting society. And using that very same thing is still how they deport migrant sex workers. They are a threat to the values of society. So when they say it's about us, it's not true. They're trying to protect themselves from us. So, oh, by the way, male sex workers, because I'm only going to speak about female sex workers today, and I know there are plenty of male sex workers. Apparently, male sex workers, according to the same old documents, they can actually be selling sex for men, can be part of a lifestyle, part of their sexuality. They can enjoy it. It can be kind of a social life, but for women, it's always bad. I'm smelling the church. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one. Female sexuality. Not that anyone is religious in Sweden, but they did the so-called evaluation. I'm sure most people in this room know that it's crap, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it anyways. The evaluation was, the instructions for the evaluation that was done, that was published 2010, was that it was not supposed to look critical at the law and see what impact the law had. It was supposed to look at how the law could be made more effective and whether we should put the punishment for clients up. So this was not about looking how, what the reality was. They contacted Rose Lyons in 2008 when they were preparing it, when we were only a small activist group, not an organization. We were 7 people answering the little survey. Then there is this little anti-group that no one has ever met called Priests, that are former exploited women, I think. We have never met them. They only pop up for governmental consultations. It's very fascinating. So they got to represent the former sex workers, and we got to represent the people still exploited in prostitution, which is what it said in the report. And we said stigma was up, and that was a good thing, according to the evaluation. Thinking of the purpose of the law, it was good that we were more stigmatized. People did react to this. But that was also buried. The discrimination ombudsman was furious. No one cared. They also talk a lot about how they did research saying that, 2003, this and this many men had bought sex, and now 2008, a much lower percent have bought sex. And the Institute for Criminology at Stockholm University looked at the numbers and said this is impossible. Even if every man in Sweden stopped selling sex, you could still not have such a decrease in the percentage of men who have sold sex. So it was fabricated numbers. That was also buried. And still no one really asked what sex workers thought, because you see, it doesn't matter. This is what's important to remember. It does not matter what we think, because this is not about us, it's about society. And I'm going to say that over and over again, because if we're going to fight this, if we're going to tackle this, we need to understand what we are talking about. One good example is Sweden's HIV strategy. Have anyone heard Sweden's HIV strategy? No, because it's not in English, but I have it in English.
Are you hearing at the back still?
Yeah, good. The government's long-term goal is to eliminate prostitution and the trade with human beings for sexual purposes. In the government's view, it is therefore important to highlight the close relationship between men's exploitation of people in prostitution and the spread of HIV infection and other sexually transmitted infections. Men's behavior is the problem and needs to be changed. This change can only come about if men take responsibility for their behavior, take responsibility for their sexuality and their view of women and girls. In addition, sexual exploitation must of course be people that are sexually exploited must of course be a target group in the preventive work. People are subjected to prostitution should therefore be included amongst the risk groups. There should be a responsibility to emphasize the close relationship between men's exploitation of people in prostitution and the spread of HIV infection. Yeah, the right to health. So HIV does not spread by unprotected sex, it's spread by paying for sex. So you know that now. This is not worthy of a modern society. This is not an HIV strategy. This is ideology. This has nothing to do with the right to health. And I'm using this as an example, but this is really, it runs through every document we have in Sweden. That's really, I mean, that is really how it is. And there has been a lot of talk about effects for sex worker on the street, and I'm actually going to talk about stuff you haven't heard, if that's okay, because I know the time is limited. There has been actually some work done with people asking sex workers. We did a survey with 124 sex workers 2 years ago, released in a report in Swedish called Another Horizon, that is being translated in a few months. 2/3 of sex workers, when we asked them, what do you worry about? 2/3 said prejudice from authorities. It was the most common answer. In a country that says they are saving sex workers, prejudice from authorities. That's what we fear the most. I have another wonderful little quote here from our main police officer. I will mention him in the end also, where he says, the pro-prostitution lobby, that would be Rose Lies, by the way, the pro-prostitution lobby says that they're selling sex out of their free will because it's a part of their sexuality. Blah, 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 blah. But the law was not meant for that. The sex purchase law was meant to work as a wall against organized crime.